Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. In this podcast, your host, Lori Amin, will interview published authors to chat about their work, journey to getting published, and their book recommendations. If you share a passion for books and always looking for your next read, then join us. Welcome to the What to Read Next podcast. Today's guest is Rachel Givney. Rachel's debut novel is Jane in Love, which is out this week. Jane in Love is a time-traveling novel that brings Jane Austen to present time. In this interview, we chat about her writing process, her book, and of course, some random book recommendations. Now let's go to the interview. Hi, Rachel. Welcome to What to Read Next podcast.
Hi, Laura. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here.
So excited to have you here. So tell us a little bit about yourself.
So my name is Rachel Givney. I'm a writer and filmmaker originally from Sydney, Australia. Have you ever had an Aussie on your show, Laura?
I had to think about it, and yes, I did. I'm Natasha Lester. She just released The Paris Secret. She was just on the show a few weeks ago. And then I had a couple bookstagrammers from the Gold Coast.
Cool.
So yeah, it's funny. Like I've been able to realize that my schedule, my recording schedule works well for Australia. Like it's just the morning time. I think it's the morning afternoon for you, and I'm like it's the evening for me. So
yes, exactly. So where are you? You were in are you in Chicago? Chicago, right. Okay, yeah. No, that works really well. I think all of the states work well. So LA, I think, it tends to be if I'm in the morning, in the States, it's in the afternoon or early evening.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, well, greetings from Australia.
Yay.
I'm speaking to you from Melbourne, which is one of the cities down the south of Australia.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm a screenwriter by trade. I work in Aussie TV. So Jane in Love is actually my first novel. My day job is I'm a screenwriter, and I've had the privilege of working on some of Australia's most beloved and critically acclaimed TV shows. About 15 years ago, I had this idea for a story about a time-traveling Jane Austen who has to choose between her books and love. That became the novel Jane in Love, which is my debut novel. It's published on 27th of October by William Morrow.
I love this. I am so excited. So let's talk about what inspired you to become a writer?
So originally, my original dream was to be a film director, actually. I saw Kindergarten Cop when I was 8 years old. I thought it was a masterpiece. I still do. And I decided I wanted to make movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger. That was my dream. I thought I would direct the movies and he would act in them. As soon as I got a little bit older, that dream did extend somewhat. I realized that the thing that I really loved most was the storytelling. I love telling stories, and my goal is to move an audience if I can. And writing is one facet of that. I still do want to make movies with Arnold Schwarzenegger, by the way. That is still my dream. So if you're listening, Arnold, just give me a call. Don't be shy.
Yeah, let's hope so. So what was that journey to get your debut book published?
So like I said, I was working as a screenwriter, just in Aussie TV, and I had this idea about this time-traveling Jane Austen who must choose between love and her books. Originally wrote Jane in Love as a screenplay, as a feature film. Then I sort of forgot about it for a few years, just sort of left it in my bottom drawer. And one day I was telling a TV colleague about it, and they said, you know what, this would make a good book because it has such a literary theme. The protagonist is a writer, and there's lots of sort of references to famous scenes and characters from her novels. It's sort of a love letter to female writers, this book. So they said, you know what, why don't you write it as a novel? And I thought about that and I thought, oh, that's not a bad idea. Film and television work, it's all contract work. So you might work 3 months on one show, then you might get a break for a few weeks before you go on to the next show. So after my colleague had said that to me, I told myself, right, next time I get a break between contracts, I'm going to sit down and I will write this novel. Working on film and TV is awesome. There's this wonderful sort of collegiate atmosphere where you're working with lots of different writers at once. The downside of that is that you're always working on somebody else's characters and somebody else's storylines.
Mm.
So I was sort of excited about this as well, because writing a novel means you can really do whatever you want. You can write whatever you want. Nobody might read it, but at least you're writing your own story. You're writing your own characters. So I told myself, next time I get a break between contracts, I'm going to sit down and I'm going to write this novel. So then the show that I was working on finished up. And so I had this break and I had a little bit of money saved. And so I signed up for a 6-month novel writing course at the Australian Writers Centre, which is a writing school in Australia. About 3 days into this course at the Writers Centre, somebody called me from another TV show saying that their script editor had pulled out, and they asked me if I could come in and start the following week. And I thought, oh God, what am I going to do? You know, they were offering me great money, and I had a little bit of money saved up, and I had to decide what I was going to do. And I thought about it, and I said, you know what? You told yourself you're going to do this, so why don't you just go and do it? So I didn't take the job. I stayed with the writing course. 3 months later, I had the first draft of Jane in Love done. It actually took me 6 months to write the second draft, but that's another story. But by this time, so that was 9 months later, I still hadn't worked. I was completely broke. I'd spent all my savings just getting this novel written. I was sleeping on a mattress in a share house with other 30-somethings. I mentioned to a friend of mine at a wedding then, a few weeks later, when I was completely broke, turned up at this wedding, that I'd written a novel. And he mentioned to me that a friend of his had written a novel and offered me to put me in touch. I spoke to that friend of his, and she very kindly referred me to some agents, some literary agents.
Mm-hmm.
I signed with one of those agents. I did a round of revisions on the manuscript for her, and
Mm-hmm.
then she sent it out to publishers. The second publisher she sent it out to was Penguin Random House Australia, and
Mm.
they offered me a publishing deal. Yeah, and that was about 14 months to the day after I'd first sat down to write it. And then William Morrow, the US publisher, picked up the North American rights after that.
I love this. And so, what was the process like to see your book coming out, in Australia first? Like, what was that publication week look like for you?
It was really interesting. So when you're, it was interesting because so I signed with Penguin Random House,
Mhm.
who are awesome publishers. I guess they are what you would call a traditional publisher,
Mhm.
and maybe one of the what do the big five or the big six,
Yeah.
as they call them. So that was great because they had a lot of traditional press,
Mhm.
traditional contacts
Mm.
behind them, which was great. But the biggest learning that I had also was that your book is being published, and that's awesome, and it's being published by Penguin, and they're a great publisher. But also, there's probably 5 or 6 other books being published that week.
Mhm.
So you have to be an advocate for your own work as well. You
Mhm.
have to have your author platform out there. You need to be talking to as many people as you can, doing as many events as you can, and let your publisher sort of start you off with
Mhm.
a few events. And then you need to take the lead after that and continue those relationships that you form.
Mhm.
So, if you go to a library talk and a few readers come up to you and they might send you an email, or they might follow you on Instagram, then it's up to you to keep that relationship going,
Mhm.
which I've actually found has been the most enjoyable part of the whole process, is to meet sort of like-minded people,
Mhm.
um, who they might be Jane Austen fans, or they might be, women's fiction fans, or they might just love a good love story. And Yeah, that's been the most enjoyable part of it, is to meet up with those people and continue those relationships. And then, because those people, they become sort of interested in your career, and they
Mhm.
like to hear what you're doing next. And Yeah, that's the best learning that that's the best advice that I could give to any other writer who's just about to be, or who's going to be published, is to use the publicity that your wonderful publisher will give you, but
Mhm.
then also remember that you have a responsibility as well to be an advocate for your own work, and to go out there and engage with people.
I love this. Yeah, I started this podcast about 2 years ago, or
Mm,
it'll be 3 years in December. And it started as a bookish conversation, just an opportunity, and then it evolved to author conversations. And I really love chatting with authors because they each have their own
yeah,
journey, their own experience, and they can sell the books. They can tell you like why. What was the source of inspiration? Why did you love it? And you get to
yeah.
get excited about the book, and you're like, okay, I need to read this book now. Or if I read this book, I can be like, okay, why did you take me on this journey? Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
even like I think it's like Bethany and she mentions your book and she's like, it took me on a journey. And I was like, okay, I need to read this book. Because that author tells me like this book is like amazing. I need to look it up. So
Yeah. Oh no, I love that. And saying that, like you said, every writer is different, and everyone's had a different experience, and they bring their own experience to their writing. And that's the whole point of reading a book, because
mhm,
we want to be taken on a journey to
mhm.
another world. We want to experience something different from our own lives. Yeah, I love that. That's
I
wonderful.
love this. So,
Mm.
what is your writing process looks like? And you're a screenwriter, so I know you have that in the background, but novel writing is a little bit different from screenwriting.
It is, yeah, it's really different. That's an excellent question. So my writing process, the big thing that I found different from writing screenplays to writing novels is, um, uh, there's a scene in Jane in Love where the Jane Austen character, she goes to London in 1803.
Mhm.
And London in 18, so she lives in Bath at the time, which is sort of a smaller, more country sort of boutique kind of spa town. And she goes to London, and London in 1803 is right on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution.
Mm.
And it's so this scene that she's presented with is just an assault on her senses.
Mhm.
It stinks. The factories are sort of uh, plumping out this horrible black smoke, and the Thames River is really polluted, and the mud under her feet sort of churns up, and messes up her boots, and the people. There's so many people there, and they're heaving. And talking, and she's just really assaulted by this scene.
Mhm.
So what I found with writing, novel writing rather, is that I had to set up all of that sensory information for the reader. My
Mhm.
job is to immerse the reader in that experience. If I was writing that scene as a screenplay, all I would have written was Jane Austen walks through 1803 London, on the cusp of the Industrial Revolution. Like, I would have put one line, where in the novel I would have taken, a page and a half to sort of describe what she's going through and what her reaction was to this incredible scene. And but in a screenplay, all of those jobs, those sensory jobs that I needed to do, appropriate costumes, the locations manager would have, found somewhere to double for 1803 London. And the production set designers, they would have put all the mud in, and the smoke, and so all of those jobs I wouldn't have needed to do. That was the biggest challenge, and the most enjoyable challenge that I found between writing screenplays and writing novels, that there's so much more sensory information required to set the scene up for the reader. And the other thing that I found the difference between novels and screenwriting is that with a novel, there's so much more opportunity to show the characters' inner thoughts, their inner monologue, and what they're thinking and what they're feeling, which was lovely as well. One great advantage I have with being a screenwriter by trade is that I've pretty much had a deadline for over a decade.
Mhm.
Every week there's something due. And this has given me some good lessons in discipline,
Mhm.
which I do, which I sometimes follow, not always.
Mhm.
But I tend to follow the maxim: don't get it right, get it written. Get the
Mm.
first draft written down. Yeah, it doesn't matter if it's terrible,
Mhm.
just get it down, just finish it. That old cliche that I found it's true, that, any art, it's 1% inspiration, 99% perspiration. Just get it down. Once you have that first draft written, it's so much easier to go back and edit.
Mhm.
Um, don't get it right, get it written. I love this quote so much. I have it on my Instagram. Just get the first draft down any way you can, because there's nothing more paralyzing than staring at a blank page. So
Mhm.
write it down, and then you can go back and edit it. And that's where the fun begins. It's all downhill from there. So that's what my writing process tends to be like, in screenplays and in novels now as well. Yeah.
I love this. And so I assuming because of your screenwriting background, you probably do follow an outline of some sort. It's supposed to see where the story leads you. you know.
Yeah. Oh, I was interested. So, what the guests on your show? What do they usually say? In Australia, we say you're either a pantser
Yep.
or a plotter.
Yep.
So you either fly by the seat of your pants, um, you make it up as you go along, or you plot. You spend days in a darkened room, sort of writing out these long outlines and getting everybody's character straight. And yeah, what usually happens? Is it an even split or?
It isn't even split. I have to tell you,
Okay.
it's funny enough. Like I'll interview the author, I'll read the book, and I'll interview the author, and the author will shock me and say, "I'm a pantser." And I'm like, how did you come up with that? Or it will be like, I'm a plotter, and I have outlined all the different scenes, and I'm like, oh, it makes sense because there's like a meaning behind scene. so so it's like it's an even split, and each author has their own process because there might be a plotter pantser, there might be just a full plotter, they might plot everything down, or they might brainstorm the characters, or they might just be a full pantser and they're just like, we're just gonna see what it comes up, or they might have tried it and realized that like, oh, it did not work. I had to revise it like multiple times. And so it's an interesting question to ask, and then to see as a reader, can you tell if the author is a plotter or a pantser? That's always interesting.
Yeah. Oh, that's such a great answer, because there's pros and cons to both.
Yeah.
If you're a plotter, then you do get your structure will be probably stronger from the outset.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that doesn't mean that riding by the seat of your pants can't bring uh, uh, I I want to
It just
say a roughness which can also bring about magic or something.
Yeah, I think it just makes
Yeah.
like so it's like very intuitive. I feel like the answer
Yes.
process is very like we're just gonna uncover. You're like a mystery. You're trying to uncover something. And you're like, I don't know what is all about this, and you're like, oh, surprise, or oh, this is exciting, or oh, this makes sense, or this is how my characters want to work. So I think there's like something very like surrendering to the process.
Yes. Exactly. Exactly. And I find again, working in film and TV means it's always been drilled into me the importance of structure. Like
Mhm.
you have no choice in film and TV. So at the beginning of a new season for a TV show, there might be 5 or 6 writers, and they'll all sit around a table, and there might be a producer in the room, or there might be a network executive in the room. And what they want is they want to know in that first meeting, we're going to work out roughly what all the characters are going to do over the arc of that season. So structure is forced upon you
Mhm.
in TV world, because they need to book locations in, they need to book
Mhm.
actors in, they need to rule out days for this particular actor to be in this scene, and they've got to be in the scene with this other actor. So everything needs to be organized before time.
Mhm.
And that sort of structure led maxim has sort of been drilled into me forever, really. Um, but the downside of it is that it can be very once you get to actually writing out your dialogue and your characters' thoughts and what actually happens in every chapter, it can end up being quite boring and sucking a bit of the life out of there's no room for spontaneity. There's no room to go, well, what if my character did this,
Mhm.
or what is another way that we could make this happen. I think at the end of the day, what usually happens is it ends up being a combination of both. That's how the best ones are written, I think. So if you've got a bit of an idea of the structure if you've got an idea of where you want to go, of how you want your characters to behave, and you might have an idea of a couple of great sort of in film and TV we call it like a set piece, a couple
Mhm.
of great scenes or great chapters that you want in there. If you can have those in your head, but also keep it flexible. So keep your mind open to the idea that this could all change, or parts of this could change. I think then that's the best way. A combo, a pants plotting combo.
Yeah, I love this. Yeah, I think there's like some magic with it. Like I'm
Yeah.
I'm planning to write, and that's where I'm working on right now. And
Mm,
so, you know, based on all of those conversations, I'm like, what am I gonna be? And it's like, well,
yeah.
I think I'm just gonna be a combination of both because I like to break the rules, but like some structure, but not too much structure. So it's all good. It's all fine. So
Yeah, yeah, it is. It is really, it is all fine. And honestly, Laura, I'll say that tip again, which I say all the time because I love it. Don't get it right, get it written. If
yep.
you just sit down and write it and finish it, um, and then sort of put it away and then come back to it a few days later, and you
Mhm.
look at it, and the structure, even if it's not perfectly structured at the moment, the structure will come to you. It will
Mhm.
appear to you afterwards. And then once it's all written down, then you can see, oh, I'd love it more if the character did this, for example, or if we held out on that big revelation until a few chapters later. Or so what are you working on? So is it a novel?
I think so.
Yeah.
It's getting there. I think I might do NaNoWriMo. I think that's probably the plan. To see what it comes out. It's not gonna be like I'm planning to fail. That's what I'm setting the intention at. It's gonna be a failure and it's gonna be
I'm
great
sure
because
it won't be.
I'm gonna do it. Like that's the whole point. It's just do the work. Don't stress
Yes.
about it. Like, yeah, like is it gonna be the great American novel? Probably not. And that's fine. So we'll see. But yeah, it's interesting. Like I'm more conscious about my writing, like something I want to invest my time towards. And just because it feels like fun, creative project. Um,
Yes.
it's not, I think it's like sometimes you just think it's like, is it gonna make you money? Is it gonna be famous? All these different things. I'm like, actually, I don't. Like, that is no longer, that's not the purpose of the things that I pursue. I pursue creativity just for the sake of creativity. I pursue this podcast because I want to talk to people and I want to get to know other people, So I think it's
Oh, yes.
yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's yeah, that's actually sort of one of the themes in in Jane in Love.
Mhm.
So Jane Austen herself she never knew great fame in her lifetime.
Mhm.
But now she's considered one of the greatest writers in the English language.
Yeah.
She knew a bit of fame in her lifetime, but not much. She published most of her novels anonymously,
Mhm.
but she had something greater than fame, which was fulfillment.
Mhm.
She did the thing that she was put on this earth to do. She wrote. She did the thing that made her heart sing. And so no, it sounds great. It sounds like you've got exactly the right attitude, and you probably, and like you said, you don't, if you go in with no expectations, that's the best thing. The only expectation you should have is to make yourself happy, is to make yourself fulfilled with what you're doing, to enjoy
Yeah.
what you're writing.
Yeah, it's just like I don't know, it's like a fun project. I think I've been
Yes.
inspired by talking to all these authors and all the different things. And it's funny enough, I just live in New York City, and so the New York City culture, if you've been there, it's a lot of like you're
Yes.
always on the go. You always have a side hustle that creates
Yep.
something. And so I left the New York City culture thinking it's not gonna happen. I'm tired. I'm gonna take a break. I'm not gonna do any of this stuff. And I moved to Chicago pre-pandemic, 2 weeks before the pandemic. And so my Chicago experience has been like I have all these passion projects that have grown, and I'm making money, and I'm doing all these different things, and it's been wonderful. But the reality is, I'm doing them for fun. Like I'm doing them for connection. I'm doing them for a place of sense of self. Like it just feels good. I'm not doing them for the side hustle mentality that the funny enough that it can turn into the full-time hustle. Um,
Yes.
you know, it's
Yes.
interesting.
Yeah, no, that all sounds wonderful. I wish you all the best. Yeah, and having done this a little bit now, I can say that really the most enjoyable times in this process has been the actual engagement with other writers. It might be my editor, or it might be readers who love to write, or who love to read, and love to hear a good story. And that
Mhm.
that's why we do it. So yes, very best wishes.
Thank you. So let's talk about Jane in Love. What was the source of inspiration, and what made you decide to make a time traveling Jane Austen novel?
I
Right?
know.
It's a unique trope. You're like, first of all, we love Jane Austen as a unique trope, and then
We
think about it, like
do. We
putting her in a present day, it's like mind blowing.
Yeah. Well, okay. So the novel is about a fictional Jane Austen.
Okay.
And as you said, she time travels, well, because the real Jane Austen never time traveled, but in the novel, the fictional Jane Austen, she time travels to the present day, and she falls in love with a modern day man. In her real life, the real Jane Austen never married or had any children. It's this great irony that the queen of love stories herself died a spinster. So in the novel, Jane falls in love with this modern day man, and she finds herself so happy in the 21st century that she decides to stay there.
Mm.
Yeah. Now, as soon as she decides to stay, all of her books begin disappearing from the shelves. She realizes that the longer that she stays in the 21st century, the more she will erase herself from history. So,
Mm.
yeah, so ultimately she must decide. She's got to decide between staying in the 21st century, where she's found love, but she has lost the ability to write. She'll never write anything again if she stays.
Mm-hmm.
Or she can return to her own time, where she will obviously lose the love that she's found,
Mm-hmm.
but she will write her books and she will become Jane Austen.
Mm.
And where the idea came from was I first read a Jane Austen novel when I was 15. I read Emma. I loved it. I fell in love with the wit and the humour, the timelessness of it, and the beautiful love story. And I felt intrigued about this author. I had no knowledge of Jane Austen at the time. And so I researched her biography, and I felt disarmed when I discovered that the writer of this beautiful, witty love story, she never married or had any children. You know, Jane Austen died a spinster. I was considering a career as a storyteller, as a writer myself at the time, and I researched the biographies of other pioneering female writers, you know, the Bronte sisters, Emily, Charlotte, and Anne, Louisa May Alcott, who wrote Little Women, the poet Emily Dickinson, and so many more of these female writers. And I was sort of horrified to discover that all of them either had disastrous romantic lives or none at all. You know,
Mm.
none of these women had children, and only a couple of them ever married. And this sort of um, uh, it's kind of endemic in all of these women, all of these early women who wrote, or maybe who pursued a creative life as an artist, or even a career as maybe a surgeon or a doctor. None of them had children,
Mm.
and only a few of them married. And so I wondered, did these pioneering female writers, did they need to be unhappy or single in order to create this art they made? Was that the thing that helped them to make this art? And if Jane Austen had to choose between the heart and the pen, what would she choose? And that's how Jane in Love was born.
Mm.
Now, yeah, and the time travel element, where that came from, well, I mean, I love time travel books, first of all,
Mhm.
you know, and movies. I love Outlander and Time Traveler's Wife. I love Back to the Future, and yes, I do love The Terminator with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Mhm.
And what I love most of all about these is the time travel dilemma. You know, like when a character moves back or forward through time in these books and movies, and by doing so, their presence in the new time changes history, and
Mhm.
they must decide what they're going to do. Will they stay with that new reality or that new timeline they've created? Or will they try to go back and fix things, you know, to undo the damage that they've done, even though if it hurts them or changes their life or the lives of the people around them? And that's so this is the why time travel is in Jane in Love, because I wanted to set up that dilemma for Jane Austen. So in
Mhm.
the novel, Jane, she wants nothing more than to find love. She's 28 at the time, and she's unpublished, and she's in danger of becoming a spinster. She needs
Mm.
to marry soon. So she's this sort of vivacious and witty woman on the outside, but she's very lonely on the inside. So she strikes this deal with a matchmaker who offers to take her to her one true love. What she doesn't realise is the deal that she struck is this sort of Faustian bargain. She's essentially going to have to sell her soul to get what she wants. Her one true love is in the 21st century. And so by traveling into the present day, she um, gets to see how famous she has become, how
Mhm.
much she's revered now. She gets to see that she's a published author and a much beloved one. You know, people build museums in her honor these days.
Mhm.
And then she falls in love. And then by deciding to stay with him, it means that she will never return to her own time where she'll
Mm.
write her books. So the longer she stays in the 21st century, the more of her books begin disappearing from the shelves. And so she has to decide that time travel dilemma where if she's going to stay in the present where she's found this love, this thing that she's always wanted, or if she's going to return to her own time where she'll write these books and become the world famous writer that we all know and love, Jane Austen. So the
Mhm.
time travel was a way to set up this dilemma.
Mhm.
Yes, I also had great fun showing what Jane Austen would make of the present day, you know. So, when she arrives, she's sort of horrified by all the horseless steel carriages. That's what she calls a car, and the strange dating rituals that we have these days, and all of our fashions, which are obscene to her from her point of view. So there's a lot of fun in the novel with that as well, is showing what Jane Austen would make of the present day.
I love this. And so, what was the process like to develop Jane as a character? Like, did you do some research? Well, I'm assuming you did some research around her. But what was the process like to then think about her, like sending her in the 21st century, sending her in the 19th century? What was that
I
research?
know.
Yeah.
Well, so I lived in the UK for 5 years in the 2010s, and I fell in love with the country and its people. I visited Bath, so the novel's set in Bath.
Hmm.
I visited Bath 4 times to research the layout. So I went to all the places where Austen lived and visited. And then I just read everything I could get my hands on about Jane Austen herself. So biographies of her, literary criticisms, the letters she's written which have survived. I wanted to find out, did she ever really fall in love? Maybe did anyone ever propose to her?
Hmm.
Did she harbor this secret love for somebody, or did she choose to live as a single woman her whole life so she could write? And so I read everything I could about her. And what I concluded was that she possessed a terribly gifted intellect. I mean, this woman really was a genius. She had no writing teacher. She wrote all of her novels in complete isolation on these tiny bits of paper in a little sort of drawing room in her house, which she shared with her mother and her sister. She received no help from writing instructors. She did not contact any fellow writers. She wrote this all on her own. And she seemed to me a very, very warm lady, but also quite insolent and very introverted. And she was a much beloved aunt, sister, and friend.
Mm. I love this. I'm
Yeah.
fascinated with Jade. Yeah, I love her novels. I love the retellings of her novels. I love like
Yes,
what
me
it has
too.
become. Like now, like even that, it feels like comfort food. Like her movies are comfort food. Like it's just comfort. So
I know. It's funny. Like I'll watch it. You watch numerous things on Netflix and movies and stuff. But I'll always, like you said, for comfort, I'll always go back to watching to watching a Jane Austen movie or a Jane Austen series. She's still so timeless. I think it's because she's funny, because
Mhm.
funny doesn't date. So
Yeah.
she's still as funny as she was 200 years ago, and she writes great characters. So she writes great love interests, and she writes great female characters. They're always sort of very witty heroines, and the dialogue is always so good.
Mm.
So yeah, it is. It's like comfort food to always go back and watch a Jane Austen movie. Yeah, I love it. One of my favorite things to do.
I love this. Yeah, me too. So what are some of your upcoming projects? What are you working next?
So at the moment, I'm editing my second novel. It's
Mm.
called Secrets My Father Kept. It's another women's fiction novel,
Mhm.
exploring the similar themes of Jane in Love, about women and the choices, that they have to make, or that they had to make when pursuing a career.
Mm.
This one has more of a historical fiction
Mhm.
angle to it. It's set in Poland in 1939 on the eve of the Second World War.
Mhm.
And this time it's about a young woman called Marie. She's 17,
Mhm.
and she's this sort of intelligent and curious young woman, and she's searching for her mother, who disappeared 15 years earlier, just after the Great War. And
Mm.
she clashes with her father, Dominic, who is this sort of brilliant but very secretive doctor. He refuses to talk about what happened to her mother. And as World War II approaches and Hitler prepares to invade Poland, Marie, this young girl, she finally uncovers this heartbreaking truth about what really happened to her mother, and she must decide whether to reveal the secret, because if she does, it's going to sort of change her life and her father's life forever. And
Mm.
yeah, and there's also a love story in it as well. Marie falls in love as well. So
I
yeah.
love this. Oh my gosh. I love this. This sounds so good.
Oh, great.
Awesome. So now let's go to our round of book recommendations. This is an opportunity for you to share with the audience what they should read next. What is your favorite genre?
Oh, great question. Okay, so I love any genre where the story is good,
Mhm.
where there is a satisfying ending
Mm.
and great characters. I tend to read women's fiction,
Mhm.
um, but I also love literary fiction and historical fiction.
Mhm.
I I even read, sometimes I read horror fiction.
Mm.
Have you ever read Stephen King's On Writing?
No, I have not. He's
Oh,
been.
check it out. Check it out. Yeah, it's great. It's great. He's got great writing tips, really, really helpful writing tips. So when you're writing your book, it's this would be great for something to pick up from now and again to get some inspirations, writing tips. But anyway, so I read this book, Stephen King's On Writing. It's his memoir of novel writing, and so I became really interested in Stephen King after that. So, and I am such a scaredy cat. I remember once I watched Silence of the Lambs and had to sleep in my parents' bed after I watched it. I was 15 at the time. So I'm a real scaredy cat. But anyway, so after reading this Stephen King book, I picked up Misery and read it, and it's amazing. It's really creepy, but it's amazing. And it was made into a movie with Kathy Bates. She's like this woman who rescues a romance writer, but then it turns out that she's actually sort of keeping him prisoner, and
Mm.
it's really creepy. So anyway, so I'll read anything that's got a great story, but usually. I tend to read women's fiction, literary fiction, and historical fiction. How about you? What do you like reading, Laura?
Oh, I read romance fiction, young adult,
Oh, yeah.
contemporary, some fantasy, but not a lot. I've read some horror and
Yep.
I read some literary fiction. But it depends. Like for me, I like to discover like authors or hidden gems, like books that are just
Yeah.
like they're underrated and you're like you're not sure and they're not hyped up and you're like you may just give it a try and then discover how much you love them. Like that's take me on a journey. But
Oh,
I
there's nothing better. Yeah.
but I do love romance because it does have happy endings.
Yes.
So there's like
Yeah.
sometimes I like the idea, like I know what I'm expecting and I like that fact of it. Like I have issues at times with open-ended endings and I'm like, I need to know. So but it's like
Oh, yes.
it is definitely it's like it depends like the mood. But I do read a lot of like different genres, but the bread and butter for me it's romance. It's just like it just brings me joy. So
Oh, awesome. I love that. I love that. Well, okay. So one book
yeah.
that I wanted to recommend.
Yeah.
This is so retro.
Mhm.
But have you read Sophie's Choice by William Styron?
No, but I've seen the movie.
You've seen the movie? Yeah, with Meryl Streep. Um, so yeah, exactly with the Polish accent and everything. Yeah. Well, so, okay, so I've been reading this to research my second novel because it's
Mhm.
it's a World War II novel. Though it's not really research. I just ended up reading this book for
Yeah.
pleasure because they've really got nothing to do with each other. But yeah, so it's this beautiful gothic novel. I think it was written in the 70s
Mhm.
about this young man living in Brooklyn,
Mhm.
and he falls in love with this woman called Sophie. And
Mhm.
she's a Polish woman. And the thing is, she spent time in Auschwitz during World War II, the
Mm.
concentration camp. Yeah. And she carries this really dark secret about this choice, hence the title, that she
Mhm.
made during her internment at Auschwitz, which sort of changed her life forever. And by the end of the novel, you know the choice that she's made. You find out, and God, it broke my heart. It's one of those the sort of classic American big novels. It's
Mm.
beautifully written and it's got a big theme, and I can't recommend it enough. It's so retro though, and yes, but anybody who wants to get stuck into like a big American novel, pick up
Mhm.
Sophie's Choice because it's really great. The other novel that I really loved lately was Eleanor Oliphant is Completely Fine by Gail
Mhm.
Honeyman. Have you read that?
I did, and I loved it. It was just
Oh, you
like it
did,
was
yeah.
chef's kiss. It was so good.
Yeah, yeah. Like I say, I'm a sucker for a good love story.
Mhm.
But like this isn't a love story between two people. It's more about a woman's journey to sort of love and accept herself. And I loved the sort of main character, Eleanor. She's this sort of quirky, very likable loner,
Mhm.
who just goes home every weekend after work and from Friday to Sunday, just drinks on her own. And it's so sad at first, and you really want her to be fine, and she befriends this IT guy in her office, and he sort of slowly peels away the layers of her character until this sort of dark mystery about her past is revealed, which gives you some insight into the way she is, why she is.
Mhm.
And what I really loved about it was those descriptions of adult loneliness. It's such a thing that nobody ever talks about, but in this day and age, when we're all sort of in our little apartments or in our houses, and most of our interactions are sort of online. It's really a thing that's sort of become prevalent in our society. Being lonely as an adult.
Mhm.
And yeah, I really ended up rooting for Eleanor to be completely fine, like in the
Yeah.
title, for everything to work out for her. I thought it was a beautiful book. Yeah.
Yeah, I really love Eleanor. I think I love her journey, like to find herself and to accept herself, and
Yes.
just the role of anxiety and like what it shows up, like how her work life, her depression, like all of this mental illness is just and being like, and the fact that she was like working towards getting herself to be fine.
Yeah.
That was a good journey.
Yeah. Beautiful. A beautiful book. Yeah.
Awesome.
I also love The Dictionary of Lost Words by Pip Williams.
Mhm.
I recommend this to anyone who loves learning about words. So if you're a
Mhm.
wordsmith, anyone who loves women's fiction as well. It's about this sort of young girl, Esme, who her father writes dictionaries,
Hmm.
and he decides what words go in and stay out.
Mhm.
And so it's really interesting. One day she discovers one of the words that her father has discarded from his new dictionary. And the word is bondmaid,
Mm.
which is this really sort of archaic term for a female bonded servant, basically sort of one up from a slave. And this sort of leads her on a quest to discover the meanings of other words that they've discarded from his dictionary. And over time, she realizes that a lot of the words that are being left out are the words relating to women's experiences. And it's all about just what happens when a dictionary is compiled by men.
Mhm.
What words they decide to leave out. But so our experiences are shaped by the words we use to describe them. And if we don't have any words to describe female experiences, how can we describe our experiences? So it's a really interesting, lovely book, which I'd recommend to any wordsmiths out there.
Fascinating. I didn't think about it. Like now that I think about it, like, yeah, somebody has to write a dictionary and somebody has to make a choice of what words come in and what words come out. So
Yeah,
fascinating.
yeah.
So tell us where we can find you online.
So I have a website. It's just rachelgivney.com. And I'm on Instagram and Facebook. Instagram, I'm just at @rgivney, just Rachel, my last name, and Facebook, Rachel Givney.
Awesome. Thank you, Rachel, for being on the show.
Thank you, Laura. I had a wonderful time.
If you enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share with friends, subscribe, or rate and review the show. This is the easiest way to support this podcast. Want to join a romance-loving community? Want weekly book recommendations, monthly author Q&As, and book recommendation meetups? Make new friends, and then join our Patreon community. To sign up, please follow the links in the show notes. What to Read Next podcast is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. Find more podcasts to love on frolic.media/podcast. Thank you so much for listening and have a great day.